Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Thriving Adoptees podcast. So today I'm delighted to be joined by Mike Thorne, a fellow adoptee and obviously a fellow bloke. Like we're not got enough blokes on this podcast. It's mainly women.
Oh,
it's good that we're evening up the balance today, Mike.
All right.
So yeah. Mike, as I say, Mike is an adoptee, and he's also involved in this on a voluntary capacity with the association. So can you introduce yourself to the audience, please, Mike?
Sure. Thank you for having me on, Simon. My name is Mike Thorne, and I spent most of my career in business development and sales, and then eventually had the opportunity to run some companies. So on the business side of it, I'm very, very blessed to have multiple different experiences. And typically my role was the person to come in and reimagine the business. So a lot of legacy companies I had the opportunity to reimagine. On the personal side of it, I was put up for adoption at birth, and I found that I was adopted at 9 years old, and it certainly challenged me personally because I felt like I was abandoned, and dealt with a lot of trust issues and abandonment issues throughout my career and life. I did meet my biological mother and siblings at age 46. Never met my father. I was told he had an 8th grade education and didn't like successful people, so he had no interest in meeting me. But I did learn a lot about him, and feel like there's some things that I inherited from him. So I'm very, very blessed on both the personal and professional side. I've been raised by great parents. I have a great family with 3 daughters and a wife for 31 years of marriage. So very, very blessed and very happy.
Yeah. And you're also the chair of the National Council for Adoption, yeah?
Yeah, so after I had met my biological mother, I decided it was important that I get involved at a deeper level, and happened to, during National Adoption Month, hear about the National Council for Adoption. They invited me down. I had to write my story. It was part of the effort they were doing at that time, and I decided to write my story to them. They liked it. They asked me to come down. I joined the board about 7 years ago. And then last year spent time as the chair-elect learning how to be a chairman, and just recently took over as chairman of the organization. And excited about the future. We have a new president, CEO, so it's a good time to have some change heading forward.
Yeah, brilliant. And just stepping back a bit, because I just went straight past the fact that you didn't find out you were adopted till you were 9.
Right. That's correct.
So
yeah.
How did you find that out? What happened?
We were living in a state called Massachusetts, which is the northern New England, and in a split level home. And down in the bottom part of the home, we had this room, was our family room. You know, the old shag carpeting, and which was very, very common in New England back in the 70s. The wood paneling, the wood stove, and we had this TV with an antenna that had tinfoil on it because we always wanted to watch some of the sports stations, Channel 38. My parents invited me down there to have a conversation. I sat in my favorite beanbag chair. They sat on the couch, and they looked at each other for a few seconds, and looked at me and said, "Michael, we wanted you to know that you're adopted, and we love you very much." And to me, it was like a bomb went off. Like, it was just, my whole idea of belonging and who I was shattered. And I really struggled from that point forward. I remember walking down to Blueberry Lane, the street we lived on, a day or two later. I don't remember exactly when, and thinking to myself, who gives up a kid? And then I came out of my mind was like, what did I do wrong? And I think the biggest thing that came out of it for me was, I realized then and there, made a conscious decision, even at the age of 9. I didn't probably have the language at that time to decide that I'm gonna have to be perfect. And there's just no way anyone's ever gonna abandon me again. So I had to be perfect. And I made, again, at 9 years old, I can't say it was conscious, but I did really realize if I wasn't, I could get abandoned. And that really, unfortunately, impacted, good and bad, what I did for quite a long time in my life, both personally and professionally.
Wow. Well, what's your relationship with your parents like now?
It's great. My dad passed away a couple of years ago, but we had a great relationship. My folks, when I told them I was going to meet my biological mother, I was 46 and decided I was ready and it was a good time to do it. I was very conscious of the fact that they might not find that to be such a great idea. And I reached out to some folks, especially someone who had adopted a son themselves, someone I admired as a CEO of a company, and talked it through with him. And he gave me a lot of good advice of what that feels like, because he adopted his son and he had been through this experience where the child wants to meet their biological mom. So he helped me with that conversation. But the question I got back as soon as I told my parents that I wanted to find my biological family was exactly what he said that would be, which is, will I ever see you again? And if I hadn't gone through that exercise with him and having me help think through, because there's the child's impact, the biological mother, and then there's the people that have adopted you, and they all feel very differently about the experience. And so he helped me understand how to navigate that conversation. Because to me, it was like, well, of course I'm going to see you again. But to my mother and father, it felt like that was it. They would never see me again once I decided to find my biological mother. So they've been great about it. They had no information. That was back in the 1960s, where there was not a lot of information shared. So they had no insight or information related to the adoption. They just said, we'll do what we can, but they didn't have anything. So I had to go to a third-party search firm to help find my biological family.
Yeah. Wow. There's so much there. I'm not sure what to ask next. I think the curious part of me wants to know what that explosion, that shattering that you're talking about, which happened. You're in your 50s now, right?
Yep. Yes, I am. Yes.
What year were you born?
1964.
64, yeah. So yeah, I was born 67. Because when you were talking about the shag pile carpets and the wood paneling in New England, I'm thinking, in Massachusetts, I'm thinking, well, that's the same in Old England as well.
Yeah.
And the bean bags, right? So
yes. Yeah.
we had in our family room, there was brown. Yeah, in the 70s there was brown shag pile, and I had an orange bean bag. So there's lots of
Oh yeah.
That's just lightening up a bit for the for a split second. This abandonment thing, how is that now, and how has that changed, and how has that fear changed, diminished, morphed? What's happened to that abandonment in those last 50 years, the feeling of abandonment?
Yeah, not too long after I was informed of that, I had a chance to watch Hank Aaron, who was a famous baseball player. He was about to break a home run record of Babe Ruth, who was he's a real person, but sort of a mythical figure in baseball. And watching that in that same family room in April of 1974, April 10th, and watching in a very racially divided country where some people didn't want a black person to break a white man's record. But on the other side of it was this magical moment where the light bulbs are flashing as he hit the home run and people are celebrating and getting excited. And I decided in that moment that I was going to be a professional baseball player. I just found his dignity and his ability to handle all the adversities going on. I thought, wow, this guy just pushes up against the status quo and continues to march forward. And I thought, that's what I'm going to be. And so he inspired me. And so I ended up finding the baseball fields and the gyms were places I could be who I wanted to be and who I thought I could be. I didn't have to hide. And sports became an outlet because coaches really in those days cared about one thing. If you could perform, they would teach, train you, and develop you as an athlete. And so I gravitated there and thought, okay, if I just perform, I'm going to be loved, I'm going to belong. And I did that for a long time. I was high school captain of my baseball and basketball teams. We won a Super Bowl undefeated football team. Was captain in college of my baseball team. And so I went through life thinking, okay, if I perform, I won't get abandoned and I won't have any issues with this type of stuff I was bothered with. Unfortunately, that was it was a lesson that wasn't really well learned. because when I hit the age of 40, I was married, had 3 children, had been given a job as president of team sports of a company called Russell Athletic, which was a high performing organization. So I was thinking, boy, have I really got this figured out. I've been promoted all along in my career. I've got a family with 3 kids and a wife, and I have figured out how to make it through life on that perspective. But I got fired 15 months after getting hired in that job. And it was for 2 reasons. One is lack of self-awareness. And the second was, and emotional intelligence is the word used today. I'm not sure it was so prominent back then, but those 2 reasons. So I was that 9-year-old boy again, back on my shoulder, thinking I don't belong, I'm getting abandoned, and I can't trust anybody. And so I went down the path, unfortunately, of feeling like my family doesn't love me anymore. My friends are not going to care about me anymore. Because again, I identified myself based on my career, the salary, and my job title versus who I really was. And that was a transformational moment for me, because shortly after that, my family didn't abandon me. They loved me more. My friends didn't abandon me. And I started talking to people who I call them personal trust community people today. It's like, I believe you need people around you. And I have coined this idea of personal trust communities across your 5 areas of well-being, which is physically, intellectually, emotionally, socially, and spiritually. And it was at that moment I started to find people. It wasn't intentional as it is today, but it was starting to realize that these are the people that, they're subject matter experts, but they also have compassion. And they started talking to me about what happened and things that I could work on and things that I could improve on. And I started to realize that if I just could be more open and not be so afraid to have relationships, because my feeling at that time, if I built relationships, they'd abandon me. So I never could build relationships or friendships. I didn't have a lot. So even though it was a very difficult transformation getting fired, it ended up being really a blessing in many ways. And I then decided I'm going to go work for a company that cares about people and work for people that care about people. And you got to deliver the financial results on a business. I get that. And I was very, very lucky to go to Yankee Candle, a totally different industry, and met someone who changed my life, a lady named Thorne.
Yeah. Wow. So the pivotal moment wasn't getting fired. It was the fact that when you got fired, people around you stayed around you.
Yeah, there were just some people that you really found out who these trusted people were in your life. Some people just, yeah, you didn't have, you were not really doing a good job as a leader, and they just sort of, abandoned is the wrong word. I can't think of a better one. But then there were those that you didn't realize how much they really cared about you. They thought they only stayed around you because you had a job and a title, or they reported to you, or you were somehow, just like in coaching, as a coach needs athletes to be successful. I kind of viewed the world that way in business. And I didn't understand how friendships really work. And I was so afraid of having close friendships that I never had any. And when people reached back in and started to walk me through, I had to come to reality. I was too emotional in the job. I got too frustrated. It was a very stressful job. There was a company that were trying to turn around. They thought I was very capable of doing that based on what they had seen in a previous role. Yeah. But I had not been prepared for all that. So it really was the first time I started to realize, wait a minute, there's actually people that care deeply about you, not just based on your performance, but care about you as a human being. And that was a game-changing moment for me. And it allowed me to make sure that wherever I went next, I knew I wanted to be surrounded by those kind of people. Yeah. But I hadn't worked through everything yet. I still had trust and abandonment issues. And that's why Thorne was such a pivotal person when I went to the new company.
So I'm just going back around again to get it, yeah. It's straight straight in my head. And I'm actually trying to say it a few different times and get you to say it in a different time so it lands for the listeners, right?
Yeah.
So you some people supported you, some people didn't. So you understood that not everybody was going to abandon you, because some people stuck by with you. You expected them all to abandon you. Correct. Some did, some didn't. And right. Then the light bulb went on. Right, okay. somebody's got my back.
Yeah. Yes.
Somebody's got my back. And I'm getting a bit of goosebumpy here, really, because I'm thinking about me and my wife, right? So I've been with my wife maybe similar length of time that you have. I've been with my wife since 1993. And when I remember driving somewhere, I just started going out with her, and I was trying to rationalize why I'm with her, why I love her, right?
Right.
Just after we started going out together, and it was the fact, and the only thing I could come up with is she does what she says she's going to do. I can trust her. I can trust her. She does what she says she's going to do. She commits to do something, and then she follows through. So right. It was a trust issue. Now I trust well, like you. My dad's no longer with us, but my mum is. I always trusted them, but romantically, I'm not so sure. Business stuff, I'm not so sure.
Yeah.
But so what you learn is some people will stick by you even when you've messed up.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And I think it just was, so many of these people were trying so hard, because I've reached out to them now that I've gotten older, and friends of mine back in the college days or buyers I called on when I was younger would always say, geez, Mike, if I just knew I could have helped you back then. I knew there was something that held you back. I knew there was a reason why you never engaged. So I think that was the first time I almost felt I was forced to listen and to really realize that, hey, there are people that have been caring about you for a very long time. You just haven't let them into your life. Yeah. And I think because I felt I was about as down as I could get, I finally made it a conscious choice to let them help me. And it was definitely transformational in so many ways.
So the early fear of abandonment led you to seek sporting and business perfection. That worked out to an extent, but led you to this mess up or whatever it was. You know, you weren't being the leader that they needed to be, but some people still stuck by you. You talked about the lady at Yankee Candles and how important that's been. How has your fear of abandonment shifted, changed since then?
Well, she said to me a couple of years ago, so I met her in 2006, and she told me a couple of years ago, we were chatting, and she said, you know, when you first came to Yankee Candle, she was director of learning and development, and she said, I could tell right away, Mike, that you had this question in your head that was, if people really knew me, would they like me? And she said, I knew right away that I got to help this guy. And so what she did, Simon, was she slowly but surely taught me how important and how valuable it would be, even as the president of a business, and that you should have all the answers is how I thought about it. So I got to have all the answers, because if I'm not perfect, people are going to think I'm not capable and competent. And she taught me simple steps. It may sound to the audience here like really crazy, but just to go walk the floor. I had about 110 people in my division reporting to me, and I just walked the floor and talked to people, ask them how their weekend was, and share how my weekend was, some of the challenges I was facing with my kids growing up, and so on. And it just became a really powerful realization that if you share of yourself and about yourself, people won't think less of you. They'll actually start to know you. And what I started to realize, that people, instead of just being compliant, meaning they were just doing their job because they had a job and they wanted to get paid, they started being committed to me and to the company and where we needed to go. And then the next big step was she asked me to get in front of Toastmasters, which is a global organization around leadership and public speaking. And for the first time in my life at 42, 43, I shared my story. And it was 5 to 7 minutes. I was so fearful that people would just like think less of me. And instead what happened was everyone embraced me and started supporting me. And I had a couple of people say, oh my God, I was adopted to it. And they were crying and tears. And like, I've never thought about how I would go about this process. And So I began to realize that, boy, this is really, really powerful to have share. You're not out there sharing your whole life, but just sharing with people things are challenges that you're dealing with. And I really started to see people became more committed than they did before. And she was the one that pushed me. It took me, quite frankly, a couple of years to trust her, believe it or not, just because I still wasn't sure this was going to work. I was still worried, but there was something about her. She had her own lived experience. And so she understood where I was coming from and knew it would take some work. And it changed everything for me. And I have all these letters from people that have worked for me over the years talk about how much they appreciated the work I did to pull the team together, to rally the troops, to spend time with them, get to know them more so than the P&L of the business, which I refer to profit and loss. And everyone worries about what's our profit and loss statement and our balance sheet. I believe the other side, more important even today, is the people listening, which is the P&L, and individuals understand their own balance sheet. Like, how are you individually taking care of yourself? What's your balance sheet? Everyone talks about work-life balance. I don't believe that's even possible. I think you have to just realize that they're integrated in a lot of ways. So how do you find harmony? And that was a power lane that I had that I didn't realize until I went through this journey. And I've spent the last 12, 15 years harnessing that and learning from it and getting better and better at it. And I believe in today's world, it's something we need to teach, because that's going to be the key to leadership going forward. It's not the win-lose kind of thing. We need to teach people how to be others focused, community focused, and think about humanity in such a way that people will start to turn the tide on this tearing up of the fabric that's going around the world. And that's why I'm doing the Vistage work I'm doing. That's why I'm doing the National Council for Adoption work. I'm trying to make an impact. That someone told me years ago, Mike, would you stop trying to boil the ocean? You can't fix everything. And so I've been trying to hone in on things that really would be where I have the most, credibility. I've had experiences that I can share, both personal and professional, that could help some others. And that's what I'm doing. That's where I'm very intentional about that work today.
Yeah. So it sounds to me like a cracking open to becoming more vulnerable after a lifetime of being scared of being vulnerable.
Yes, that's a good word. Yeah. Yes.
What does vulnerability mean to you?
To me, it's just about being able to get comfortable with who you are and not worry about how others are going to perceive you. That to me is where the defining line was for me. It's like, just as like I joke with you, I'm an acquired taste. I am who I am, and there's certain things that I do very, very well, and other things I've got to continually improve on. And accepting that and realizing that, to me, is the key to being vulnerable, because then you can just be who you are. And I believe once you declare where you're going in life, people just start showing up. And so many people are afraid to declare who they are. And yet reality is, whether it's a presidential election or anything else, you're never going to get everyone to be 100% to agree with you. You just got to say, this is who I am. And you got to wrestle with that. And that was what I went through. I spent a long time wrestling with who am I and what is it that I stand for and what are the values I have and what do I care about? And once I got, my hands around that and decided this is who I am and this is where I want to go, and I showed up in life like that, people just start showing up in my life. And that's meant a huge difference. And the vulnerability piece of it is just getting comfortable with who you are.
Yeah.
And unfortunately for a lot of people, and I know this is a debate I've heard on some of your guests also about, do you forget the past? You got to move on, live in the present and all that. My experience is people that have had some sort of lived experience need to wrestle it to the ground. They need to figure out, I do a lot of work with CEOs, and I find they hold back, or they're not exactly being as authentic as they want to be. And it usually stems from something that happened to them. Not something that's wrong with them, but something that happened to them. When you can get to the root of that and help them uncover what it was, figure out where it's coming from and how that impacts their behaviors, their leadership style, it's a major unlock, Simon. That's been my experience anyway. So I think that, but getting over that, you got to be in a trusting, comfortable, safe environment. And that's hard to get to for a lot of people.
Yeah. what does, I mean, we use these, being who we are, and I don't know, this identity stuff. Well, identity is kind of my fascination, right?
Okay.
That's my fascination. What does identity mean to you? Because we can't, like, being authentic, we have to know who we are to be, before we can be authentic to who we are. And all these things all just kind of swim round. You've talked about values and beliefs, and what's the essence? What's the core? What's the core identity as you see it?
Well, I think we're all hardwired a certain way in terms of just who we are, and I'm a big fan of the science behind that. So there's many different tools. Predictive index is one that I've used for a long time, and that's how you're hardwired in life. So you unfortunately or fortunately, there's a certain identity you're going to have just based on how you're hardwired, and there's science behind all that. And then the second piece of it is your experiences, which some people refer to as your briefcase, sort of what you carry with you all the time, things that you've experienced, whether they're work experiences or life experiences that help shape you and help you identify, so what are your values? What do you care about? And that is stuff that just is life experiences. And then the third part of this, which is always the hardest one, which is what is it that inspires you? And only you as the individual can start to figure that out. And most people are afraid of that. And so what I do with a lot of people is I take them through an exercise and I say, let's just sit down and get out a piece of paper. On one side of the paper, I want you to write down sort of where you are personally, professionally, and health-wise. Like, how do you feel about yourself, personally, professionally, health-wise? Really sit in that. That takes 3, 4, 5 times for people to go through all that and get comfortable with sort of where they are, because people know it. They never write it down. So you write it down. And on the other side of the paper, I ask people to put what their North Star is, which is that inspirational point of where do you really want to get to? What is it that you aspire to? And I would say 95% of the people really do know what that is, but it's always scary to them. So I say it should, a word you just used about being, you have goosebumps. It should make you excited. It should also scare you a little bit, but not be dangerous. And when people map this out for themselves and start to work towards what that North Star is, that's when the people in your life, these trusted community people, show up. And I did a TED Talk recently, and I talk about this idea of you're on one side of the water and you're looking across to this place you want to get to. And I say to people, let's swim across because you really want to get there. And people go, that's too dangerous. I can't do it. I can't swim that far. And I say, okay, let's go build you a bridge. You can walk across. People say, I'm afraid of heights. I can't do it. And I say, what if I line that bridge with trusted people in your life, people that really you trust and love you, and they cheer you on, and they're going to help you get across that bridge to get to that place you want to get to, that North Star. And people will say, well, it's going to be cold. I'm not sure I can do it. It's just, I can't do it. And I say, what if you got to the other side and it was a cause you cared so deeply about that once you got across the other side of the water, you would be uplifted, and that cause you cared so deeply about would be unleashed. And at the end of the day, what that cause really is, I mean, people envision it's cancer, it's heart, whatever their passion is for. Really what it is, Simon, it's about your human dignity, your self-worth. And I think once people get over there, then they become unleashed, and that's when the greatness comes out in human beings.
Wow. I'm going to put a link. I'm going to put a link to the TED Talk in the show notes.
Yeah, it just got approved. It's up there now. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's this whole idea that the 3 most powerful words in life besides I love you are I need help. And it's stunning how few people are willing to ask for help. And there's statistics out there that say people underestimate by like 48% how likely someone is going to give you help if you ask them. The whole key is you've got to be really clear what you're looking help for. So when you lay out that North Star where you want to get to, you're going to need help to get there. And that's that trust community of people, but you got to be clear with them. Like if I said, Simon, I need some help, and you'd say, sure, what do you need? And I was all over the place, it'd be very frustrating for you, frustrating for me, would make no progress. But once you're clear on that, these people just show up in your life and they'll help you get there. And that's where people just have to get comfortable. And it's not easy. And the further you are away from a safe, economically, socially environment, the harder and harder it is. You know, you get into people that in the adoption space, especially who are in the LGBTQ community, people of color and what have you, it gets harder and harder to find your path to get there. But trying to find those people, I think, is really essential for all of us.
Yeah. Okay. So, well, I'm listening, and hopefully a few people are listening to this recording. What do you need help with now?
I think the biggest thing is, to me, as it relates to the whole space of children trying to find permanency, the number of people in the foster care system really haven't changed over the years. The number of kids aging out of the system have not changed over the years. And yet, if you look at the amount of organizations that are trying to support getting help for these kids grows dramatically all the time. And so the question is why? And what I'm challenging people on now is, how do we all look at the solution as what is the outcome we all want? And getting people and organizations that care more about the outcome than winning the financial game about getting more people to donate to their organization. Because we're more powerful as a group, as an ecosystem, than we are as individuals. So I'm seeking right now, as I take on the role I'm taking on with National Council for Adoptions, I'm seeking people and organizations. We probably have to start in a local community first and build from there. Is how do we find those people that ultimately are trying to improve the outcomes and not worried about how much money or glory they get for solving and helping a child? That's really the help I'm looking for, and finding those people. Because I believe once you do and everyone cares about the outcomes, we can start to make an impact on what's happening with the foster care system and kids that are stuck in this in adoption, because the statistics just don't change a lot. And I think that's the reason. And people will tell you it's because of money. I was down in the Hill a few years back, and the House Ways Committee said they had just contributed $187 million to states to help this exact situation out. And I asked them, and I said, how do you measure success? And she said, I'm embarrassed to say we have no idea. And I said, how do they use this money? She says, that we have no idea. We just know it's a big issue. So when people say there's no money to do this, it's not true. There's plenty of money. It's just a matter of how do you build an ecosystem of caring people that are looking at the outcome versus worried about getting money to themselves and getting the glory for themselves. And so that's what I'm looking for, those kind of people. That would be ideal, I believe, to help start making an impact on what's happening with foster care and adoption.
Okay. So in the show notes, you'll find a link, listeners, to Mike's TEDx talk, and you'll also find a link to him, a link to his organization. And I'm going to put a link into his LinkedIn profile as well, if that's okay with you, Mike.
Yes, sure. Yeah.
So if you want to get in touch with Mike directly, then you can connect with him on LinkedIn, and then once you've connected with him on LinkedIn, then you can send an individual message to him, so that you're going right to the person that is actually going to take this conversation on. So I'm just saying that so I don't forget it. As we get,
if they want to go to my website and learn more, I've got a lot of blogs on there, which is mikethorne.co. They're welcome to look on there and read the blog, because I write a lot, and I'm on LinkedIn pretty active. So if people want to, read more to understand more, they're welcome to go do that also.
Yeah. Okay. So how does this abandonment thing look for you now, personally?
Well, I don't know if it ever goes away, Simon. I think it's always there, but because I've understood it and I've spent a lot of time trying to understand where it came from and how it arrived, I did some therapy work years ago and started to understand that, being adopted at 5 months old and all the things that came with that, and how the brain develops and so on. I get it now. It's still there. There are times when I get under stress and that abandonment still comes up, but I've now got tools and I've got a whole bunch of people that I can reach out to. So for example, if I'm struggling emotionally, I've got people in my trust community I can reach out and talk to them about it. If I need help, if I'm getting ready training for a big event and I start having fears, I can reach out to people, Suzan and these different folks. So for me, I think it's always there. It doesn't go away and I'll always wrestle it, but I now have both tools and people that I can reach out to help me navigate it so it doesn't become a deterrent to what I'm trying to do and where I'm going.
Yeah. I mean, the word that comes to my mind is waned, right? Like it's diminished, doesn't it? The fear isn't as big, isn't as big as it used to be. The fear of abandonment, and I think, like as a fellow adoptee, I can fully relate to that fear of abandonment stuff in different areas, and I can think of it both professionally and I can think of it personally as well. I can think of it, like family stuff. I can think of it in terms of friendships. It's kind of, it's
100%.
there. Yeah, and then sometimes it's not. One thing came to my mind actually. Somebody, it was in a friendship, and I did something that was out of order, and the guy sent me a text message to tell me about it, right? And I never responded to the text message. That was the kind of for a while that the relationship wasn't there at all, and then his there was an accident, and it was tricky. It was a close run thing, a car crash, and anyway, I reached back out, and we got together. I apologized for my behavior, and kind of came friends again. Whether it's still the same as it was, I'm not so sure, but it's funny how these things, the learning curve that's involved in all this stuff.
Yeah, no, good for you. It's hard. I can relate to that. There's just people that you hurt along the way, and I believe there's only one pain in life. You either choose pain of regret or pain of discipline. And I don't mean discipline in the way that people probably think of discipline, but it's just constantly realizing that, yeah, you're going to make mistakes in life. It's not going to be perfect. But if you're constantly trying to get better and you're willing to admit your mistakes and admit that, there's different ways to handle things, it's just hard. We all think that we make one mistake and then we say we're never going to be able to get better again. And that's not true, because you spend most of your time trying to get back up on the horse. It's just humans as we are. And again, though, when you have these lived experiences, you're more apt to quickly go off the rails because you just feel like, okay, there we go again. It's not going to work. And that's why, you got to find people around you that can help keep you elevated. I use this analogy of being on a trampoline, and, trampolines can be fun, but they can be dangerous, right? Because if you go off the edge, you can fall off and get really hurt as you're bouncing up and down. But I use this analogy. If you have all these people that care about you holding you up on this trampoline, and you're bouncing in the middle, and all of a sudden you're having a bad day is the way to think about it. You start coming to the edge of the trampoline, people move and shift the trampoline so you're always centered. And I think that's why you need those kind of people around you, because you're always going to go off center. It's just what happens. Life is not, life's a team sport, and you just got to have those kind of people. And what you did is very hard to do, for us to reach out and say, I'm sorry, I apologize. And most people don't do it. So kudos for you to taking the time to go do it. And you're right, the relationship may never be the same, but you got to keep moving forward.
Yeah. There's another one there. There's another bit to it, but I don't think that's as important as something else that there's something else that I just want to carry on your metaphor, which I love your metaphor of the trampoline. I've seen it as, I'm going to combine my metaphor and your metaphor because I think yours is better. So I saw it as like my metaphor was the high wire act, right?
Yes, yeah, it's a good one.
So
yeah,
you talked about work-life balance and that being impossible. The thing about the high wire act, if you're trying to balance, they're never in balance.
right,
They're always adjusting, right?
right,
But if I'm on that high wire, I've got a fear of falling. Okay. Now, through my own work on myself, shall we say, I know there's a safety net. So if I combine that with your analogy of the trampoline, so my safety net is quite a lonely place. My metaphor is quite lonely, and the safety net isn't. It's just attached by string. There's nobody holding it.
right.
I prefer your metaphor because it involves people. It involves connection. It involves love. It involves support. If we, what do people say? The wound comes. The wound is in a lack of relationship, so the healing takes place in relationship. Something like that.
Interesting.
Does that make?
I've heard that. Yeah, I know where you're going with that. I've not heard that. That's a good one. Yeah.
So when you're on the trampoline bouncing, and you're going to fall, that people are going to move the trampoline for you. So instead of hitting the edge, which is hard, if you hit the metal of a trampoline edge, the edge of a trampoline is metal. That's going to do you some damage. If you miss completely and land on the floor, that's going to do some damage. But you've got this community. You built this community of people around who are going to move the trampoline around for you, and you're gonna bounce, right?
Yeah.
We're born to bounce.
Yeah.
We're born to
bounce. They hold you accountable, but they love you at the same time. So they obviously aren't just going to do whatever you want and just say go do whatever and we'll always catch you. But these are people that they have competency in their area of expertise, but they also have that love and compassion for you. And so having that balance, because then when they give you feedback, when they try to talk to you about what just took place, you take it in the vein that it's meant to be, which is to help you get better versus, hey, wait a minute, here you're judging me. And it's a no judge zone is what it is really with these people. And they're hard to find. But you got to at some point in time be able to pick up and use those words, I need help. And those are the kind of people said, I'm here to help, just tell me what you need help on. And if you're clear on that, I believe it's very, very powerful, and you'll find that it'll start to unleash your own personal greatness. Because taking away someone's human dignity, you're born with it, you're born like you belong, human dignity, but over time, life just keeps chipping away at this, and suddenly you feel like you have no value. And so getting this community around you, I believe, is the powerful way to help you get from where you are to where you want to go.
Yeah. Fascinating. So what's the question that I've not asked you, Mike?
I guess I'm just curious how to help you. You've obviously got a lot of passion given your own story, and then you've built a podcast here. So tell me, how is it that I could be a resource for you, your audience, that we haven't covered yet today?
Well, the first one would be when this podcast goes live, to share it.
Yep.
To share it far and wide.
Okay.
That like within your network, within your network, your Vistage network, the council network, and let's get more people listening to the podcast, to your episode. I can't remember how many, 160. I've done 160 other episodes so far.
Wow.
In 13 months. We are closing. We've just gone past 22,000 downloads. 68% of them are from the States for people interested.
Interesting.
So that would be the number one thing. And then the other thing is I'm doing I'm doing the podcast. I'm doing my own webinars, and I'm doing webinars for adoption organizations. I'm doing webinars for employers. I'm looking to do webinars in educational settings. Any connections that you can make with people who are looking for a speaker on the subject of adoption.
Okay.
I'd love to have a conversation with those people.
Okay, great.
Yeah. And then I guess the third thing is I'd love to see what we can do to together. I've got all those people, the 160 people that have been on the podcast. We've got the council, got you, we've got me. How can we bring more people together to get those numbers down? I keep on seeing them. It's 100,000 kids in care in the US, isn't it? 100,000 whose rights have been relinquished. Is that the not rights have been relinquished? What's the? There's a word. I'm not using the right word, but
whenever you either at 18 or 21, you lose all resources, and you're basically left to your own devices, which is quite frightening. And some states in the US have started to move that from 18 to 21. But even then, the statistics would say there's very little chance that those kids are going to get their high school degree in college and get a real job and so on. So there's a lot of work to be done, to say the least. So I appreciate all of the work you're doing. Just having you doing a podcast is bringing awareness, obviously, and having impact. So let's stay connected. Again, I very much appreciate the time here and always enjoy talking about topics like this.
Yeah. Thanks, Mike. And thank you, listeners. Check out the show notes, check out Mike on his TED Talk, check out his website, check out NCFA website, and get in touch with him on LinkedIn. Thank you very much for listening.